Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. This is the France 24 debate. Despite the threats of the Taliban, Pakistanis going to the polls in the largest numbers seen in decades this weekend, returning to office, Nawaz Sharif of the Muslim League Party. We're here to talk about it with the Pakistani ambassador to France, Khalid Iqbal. Welcome back. Welcome back as well to France 24's very own Leila Jacinto. Joining us from Washington, Ahmad Majid ER. He is of the American Enterprise Institute, and we'll be joined shortly by Ayesha Siddiqa, author of Military Inc. Inside Pakistan's Military Economy. We were talking about the former cricketer Imran Khan and the inroads he made in the election before the break. Now, while Imran Khan has straight out promised to sever security ties with the United States, Nawaz Sharif says no such thing, but he does promise to toe a tougher line on U.S. drone strikes inside Pakistan, strikes that weakened the credibility of the previous government. He said, this is a very important issue and our concern must be understood properly. We will sit down with our American friends and we will certainly talk to them on this issue. So there is this sense, Leila Jacinto, that the issue of the U.S. drones that have been going after Taliban inside of Pakistan, that it really was one of the weakening factors for the outgoing government.
It definitely was. It was a strengthening factor for Imran Khan, as whose rise we were talking about. Just one thing on the rise of Imran Khan that I want to point out. He's a Pashtun, or Pathan, as they call it. So he did indeed get that province. But, you know, on the other hand, the leftist party, the ANP, the Awami National Party, very severely hit during the campaign by Taliban threats. So it's interesting, you know, the PMLN and Imran Khan's party, both right-wing parties that have now come up to the fore. But on the question of U.S. drone strikes, very important, you know, very populist, played out on the campaign trail, both Imran Khan and Nawaz Sharif. But I do believe Nawaz Sharif when he says we will sit down with our American friends and talk, because Nawaz Sharif has a history of sitting down with his American friends and talking. But the real, you know, the elephant in the room on this policy is the military. And, you know, it's going to be a very interesting phenomenon, because by the end of this year, the Pakistani military chief is going to change. We're going to have a new administration. So it's you know, it's a whole new pack of cards, is how much on this particular ground the Pakistani military is willing to cede. You know, so far, you know, the military has been happy to take a back seat. But this is a very critical issue. Washington
is so hold on. Let's pick it up from the top here. U.S. drone strikes. Who do they undermine more, the civilian government or the Pakistani military?
It depends on who you listen to. There are a fair number of people who say that the U.S. drone strikes was started with the tacit approval of the Pakistani military. There are others who disagree. The civilian, the politicians that we have now are definitely against U.S. drone strikes. Across the board, very unpopular inside Pakistan. But remember, the Pakistani military looks to the Pentagon for military aid, and Washington has an agenda. So, you know, Washington and the military, you know, they've been Cold War allies for 60 years now. So how much ground does Nawaz Sharif have? You know, as I said, you know, he's called the Lion of Punjab, but will he be a mere alley cat when he's confronted with the generals? That's what I want to see, and that's what I find interesting.
When there are protests over U.S. drone strikes, how much of it, listening to Leila here, how much of it is grandstanding?
No, drone attacks have been taking place in Pakistan, and I think since 2004 now. And we have had over about 350 strikes, in which we have lost little less than 3,000 people, and about 6,000 to 7,000 people have been injured in that. How many targets have been hit? And how many people have been injured and wounded, and what's the collateral damage? No, this aside, in the first place, it is not acceptable to Pakistan. No, it's against our sovereignty. It's against the basic norms of conducting the interstate relations. So we do not reject it. We do not accept it. We reject it. And I do not think, as Leela was saying, that it has been done with the tacit approval of the military. No, I do not agree to that. Because drone attacks is one thing, probably the whole country would be one on that issue. And talking and negotiating these issues, of course, that is how we come to the solutions to various problems. And this is one problem which is confronting the people of Pakistan. And it's not that the people who are hit by it are affected, you can feel it all over the country.
All right,
so this has to be negotiated. This has to be talked about.
So, Ahmad Majidyar, is there the realization in Washington that perhaps these drone strikes undermine democracy?
Everyone here in Washington understands that the drone attack is a military tactic. It's not a strategy. It will not end the problem of militancy, extremism, and terrorism in Pakistan. But given the fact that the United States does not have any military forces inside Pakistan, and also the intelligence and military cooperation between the two countries have come to the very low point. And also that the Pakistani government, especially the military, has been reluctant to take on those militants, especially the ones who are fighting in Afghanistan against Americans and also the Afghan government. That's why the drone attacks have remained the only viable option for the United States to target the militants there. And while it has not been able to end the problem of militancy there, it has decimated Al-Qaeda, has killed a lot of senior Al-Qaeda leaders there. It has also killed a lot of senior Pakistani Taliban leaders over the past years. So given the inaction of the Pakistani government, I think that the United States has no choice but to continue the drone attacks. And the issue of drones will continue to also strain ties between Washington and Islamabad in coming time.
Ayesha Siddiqa, now that Nawaz Sharif has been reelected, how's he going to handle this issue?
I think it's a very tough one, especially the fact that he has, probably it is Imran Khan's party, which will be making government in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Now, that's a very tricky one, because whoever controls Khyber Pakhtunkhwa means controls the tribal areas, would have a critical role to play in the 2014 negotiations and whatever happens in the war on terror policy. Now, that is something which, ideally speaking, the government and center should have been controlling. So there will be a problem. Then there are a couple of, there are different levels on which you'd have to negotiate. One is with the military. They may not have the same perspective on how to deal with the problem. Just to spite him, the military could also kind of go into a hyperdrive on a number of issues. The other thing is that he has to put a distance between himself and the militants or the jihadi in mainland Pakistan, which is Punjab and I would call Sindh. Now, I would argue that the fact that he has been elected and has got a safe majority in Punjab also, in a way, delegitimizes these militant forces who have been growing in Punjab. And in fact, right before the elections, he tried to put this, small measures, like giving ticket from one constituency where Sipai Sahaba, the Deobandi militant outfit, their candidate, their leader was contesting. He gave the party ticket to their opposition. And the guy won on PMLN ticket. Similarly, in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, he gave a party ticket to somebody who was opposed to the Taliban. Now, I think what is very interesting to note is that although he's right-wing, his party is not religious, it has a right-wing flavor. But perhaps, and the interesting thing is that right now in Pakistan, every party, even those who claim to be secular, they've always stood by the right-wing agenda. They've never stood against it. So here is a party with a right-wing flavor which perhaps could build that legitimacy and push back militants bit by bit.
All right. So Leela Jacinto, that's interesting. So the idea that Sharif is being playing it cautiously and with both sides. Are we being a little bit harsh on Nawaz Sharif. Can politicians change? Do we have to? I mean, is the Nawaz Sharif of 2013? This is 14 years since he's been in office.
Well, many people would argue that if any Pakistani politicians could possibly do something, it would be, someone who has served office twice. He knows the players. He's fairly familiar with the military. He's had a bumpy record with the military, but I would say Nawaz Sharif, could be the one to deliver. Of course, now the danger now is the expectations are so high. In a way, it's good to see optimism in a country that has had so much of bad news for the past 10 years. The danger now is in terms of delivering. But Nawaz Sharif has the elements of being able to, if anybody can, put some weight into this. He comes with the proper, the backup of a party. He has a strong base in Punjab. He could possibly we could see some change.
You could see a new Nawaz Sharif. You were mentioning one of the key issues, which is reining in the military. Both the head of the Supreme Court and the head of the army have terms that expire soon. In the case of General Ashfaq Parvez Kayani, what is Sharif's plan? Let me ask you, Ahmad Majidiyar, how does he, in effect, what do you see as will be the plan on the part of Nawaz Sharif, perhaps being smarter from having been toppled in a coup in the past?
I think that things are very much different in Pakistan. New power centers have emerged and they have been strengthened. The judiciary is just one of the examples. The civil society is another. So in my opinion, gone are the times that the military can just step in and topple the civilian government. So the relationship between the Nawaz Sharif government and the military, I think that it will be much more smooth than it was with the military back in the late 1990s. And I think that Pakistan is also in a situation that the army doesn't have a choice but to let the civilian government just run the civilian issues. But of course, there will be just problems when it comes to foreign policy, especially when it comes to Afghanistan, when it comes to India, that the army has certain red lines. And again, General Kayani is just, his term is expiring within a few months. But whoever becomes just the next chief of the army, I think that the strategy and the plans of the army will not change. So it will be a more smooth relationship, but not a complete, very friendly one.
We won't call it a parallel center of power, but sometimes it's acted like an autonomous center of power, the army, most notably when it comes to dealings with, for instance, the disputed Kashmir region with India. Do you see Ambassador...
Absolutely. If I can just add something
Sure.
quickly, that over the past 5 years, the government of President Zardari, the People's Party had completely delegated the foreign policy when it came to India, when it came to even the United States or Afghanistan, to the military. And I believe that Nawaz Sharif will try to reassert some of that control and will try to have his own India and Afghanistan and United States policy.
Okay.
And that could antagonize some inside the military as well.
Can he do it? Can Nawaz Sharif do it?
I wouldn't agree with that contention. You see, because all the stakeholders are there and the foreign policy is formulated after taking into account the input of all the stakeholders within the country. Yes, the military has been powerful in Pakistan, but it does not mean that means a weak civilian government. The civilian government has been elected on the basis of votes, and they are going to conduct the foreign policy, but it does not mean that they're going to do it in isolation. They will be seeking the input from all the stakeholders, which includes the military, which includes the other political parties also. And I think the first and foremost priority of the next government would be to tackle the economic issues. We haven't talked about this issue. That is going to be the first and foremost task of the new government. Secondly, for the law and order within the country. And these are the two bigger tasks. Coupled with that will be the foreign policy issues because of Afghanistan, terrorism, extremism within the country. And this is what Mr. Nawaz Sharif and his party and the new cabinet is going to do.
Leo Jacinto, we saw in the past when there was, for instance, that attack in Mumbai that took place a few years back, that there were links established with Pakistan's intelligence services between those militants. Will that intelligence service continue to be a law unto itself, or does Nawaz Sharif, is the balance of power shifted enough so that a civilian prime minister can reign in the military?
Do you want a short answer on the intelligence agency? Yes, they will continue to be a power with itself. I don't disagree with the things Ambassador said. However, this thing in terms of cutting the line, of drawing a distinction between domestic issues, the economy, and keeping security separate is not going to work, because the best thing that you need for investment is security and law and order. Also, in terms of controlling the situation, at the heart of the matter is the use of proxy militants, and this is where the Kashmir issue comes into the picture. Now, just before Nawaz Sharif was ousted by General Musharraf, who's now sitting under house arrest, the military had conducted a proxy campaign, a proxy military operation in the Kashmir region, which Nawaz Sharif actually, he had a ceasefire deal with New Delhi. So it's not just a question of the military; it's also the question of all the proxy players, and how many of the groups that the military will then just have deniability. So how much of that really can a civilian administration control when the military intelligence complex is on a deniability route?
I would just like to add one thing, François. It's not the proxy players. Okay, let's make it very clear. These are the non-state actors. Non-state actors can act anyway. They are going to do things which two governments are planning to bring peace between the nations, and these non-state actors can disrupt the whole thing. We have to live with it, and we have to control those tendencies all across the world. Right. So non-state actors, they are the people who need to be controlled, because nations are going to conduct negotiations to resolve their disputes.
And we'll see how Nawaz Sharif's resolve will be. I want to thank you, Ambassador Iqbal, for joining us. I want to thank Leila Jacinto. Also want to thank Ahmed Majidiyar for joining us from Washington, and Ayesha Siddiqa for being with us from Islamabad. Thank you for joining us here in the France 24 debate.